reason that I really enjoy working on campus. So today's session was called Learning about the Interdisciplinary Approach at Providence College. And that's kind of a lofty title, so thank you for showing some interest in that. But I think that you'll learn a little bit more about how everything is connected. We are a liberal arts college, which means that we believe in a well-rounded education and students kind of exploring different options in terms of not only what they are majoring in, but different subject areas outside of their major as well. So we're going to learn a little bit more about probably the most unique aspect academically about Providence College, and that is our Development of Western Civilization course. From there, we're going to hear from some professors that are in different departments on campus. You'll also hear from another professor who is an assistant with the Center for Engaged Learning. And that is, well, you'll learn a lot more about that a little bit later on. I don't want to give it all away. And then we're going to wrap up today with a student panel. So you can hear from current PC students about their experience at Providence College. So all in all, we are probably going to have you in and out in about an hour, depending on the Q&A from you. But that leads me to my next point. So if you have any questions about anything that we're talking about or anything that you would like to know about PC, feel free to utilize the Q&A portion, and then we will answer those questions as they come through. So in order to kick this off, I'm going to invite one of our professors, Dr. Alex Moffatt, and he's going to share a little bit about that Development of Western Civilization program that I talked about earlier. So Professor Moffatt, whenever you're ready, we'll oh, I have to make sure that you can actually show your video. That's that would be helpful. So you can you should be all set now, and then we can get going and start the day. See, perfect. Everything worked out.
You can see me. That's excellent. Yeah. That's excellent. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Alex Moffatt, and as Matt said, I am the director of the Development of Western Civilization program here at Providence College. I've got a PowerPoint I'd like to share with you. And altogether, I'm not going to take too much of your time, maybe about 10 minutes, and then we'll press on with the program. But I want to, this is the core course at Providence College. Every student takes the DWC or Civ class. So I want to tell you a few things about what it's about. Some of you are prospective students, but we might also have some parents looking over the shoulders of their students, to see what this course is about. And so let me introduce it to students and to parents. Anyway, this is the Rhode Center for the Humanities. This is the building where my office is and where all our Civ classes take place. And I'm going to talk about DWC. Of course, we're having, as you can probably guess, not a normal semester this semester. We are not always in the Rhode building, but hopefully by the time you come in fall 2021, we will be entirely back in our classrooms in Rhode. Anyway, let me go ahead and get started. So this course, DWC, it's a course in cultural and intellectual history, focusing primarily, although not exclusively, on the Western tradition. That word Western is in the title of the course. And of course, we take that seriously. We think in particular about the role of the Catholic Church, since we're a Catholic Dominican institution. But we also bring in works from other traditions into our courses. So what matters here, of course, in cultural and intellectual history, and one that's going to hopefully ground you in such a way that will help you not only in your other classes, but also will continue to be of use to you as you go out into the world as a citizen. Okay, it's a 16 credit class. And if you're taking the liberal arts honors version of this class, it's 20 credits. And we call it the core of the core. And by which we mean we have a core curriculum at Providence College. As Matt said, we're a liberal arts institution. And to be the core of the core means this is the thing that kind of holds it together. Again, you're going to be taking knowledge that you gain in the DWC program, knowledge of text, but also skills that you're going to acquire, how to read difficult texts, how to write, how to put together an argument. And you're going to take those skills and that knowledge and bring it to bear in whatever your chosen major is, whether it's biology or accounting or anything at all on campus. Civ and the skills you learn and the text you learn are hopefully going to have some relevance for you. So again, the core of the core, kind of what keeps it all together. It consists of 3 courses in a historical sequence: 101, 102, and 201. In 101, for first-year students arriving in September, you might start with a text like the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest known works of literature, or you might start in ancient Greece or in the Old Testament. The first semester is a course about the classical world. Second semester, 102, goes from the medieval world through the early modern world. And 201 is a course on basically how the West interacts with the rest of the world in modernity, from 1776, let's say, to the present day. So a historical sequence, and by the time you go through those 3 semesters, you'll have started at the beginnings of recorded history and concluded with the year 2020. There's a 4th class, though, and that 4th class is not in a historical sequence, but rather it's a themed colloquium chosen by students in their sophomore year. We're in the process right now of preparing our colloquia and for spring of this year for sophomores. Students are going to register in a couple of weeks. They're currently browsing lists of colloquia. And what professors do is they collaborate on colloquia about a certain theme. And I want to give you an example of what some of these colloquia might look like. In fact, what they do look like. These are real examples. For instance, coming up this spring, we have a course on racism and the Theologies of Liberation. We have a course called Nature Writing and Creative Writing. That's, again, it's a collaboration. One of the collaborators is a published novelist. We have a course called BWC Through Food. It's going to look at culinary history, and the 2 professors, I know this next semester, they're going to be remote. They're going to be broadcasting from their kitchens as they do some cooking demonstrations, but also talk about some of the cultural history of food, of coffee, for instance, or of wine, or of, yeah, you get the idea. There's a very popular course on the history of sports. And there's a course that a philosopher and a literature professor teach called Apocalypse. And they were, it's a course on representations of the end of the world. It might look at the book of Revelations from the Bible, and then next week look at a contemporary zombie movie. And, we were teaching this course last spring when the COVID-19 outbreak happened, and all of it, when it seemed kind of like the end of the world, all of a sudden this became the most relevant course on campus. It's a very, very popular one. Anyway, as you can see, there's a lot of really attractive topics here, and students choose from those topics in their sophomore year, and either maybe they connect it with their own major, for instance, or they might it might be just something they're very passionately interested in. And as you can see here, these courses cover a variety of different topics. You're bound to find more than one that will fascinate you. The course itself, DWC, is taught by 3 professors from English, history, philosophy, and theology generally. Sometimes we have folks from political science or art history, for instance. But it's one of the things that makes this course unique is that we collaborate together. We teach it from the team, and it's part of the interdisciplinary aspect of this course. I, for instance, work with a theologian. I work with a historian, and we bring the course. We bring the course together. We collaborate, and so it's not just sort of the 3 of us working in parallel. We try to work together to make a really true interdisciplinary experience. It's a 4-credit class. 2 hours of that are in the lecture hall, and 2 in a student-centered seminar. And usually we keep the seminars at most about 16 students, so these are small class sizes. How that works. So for twice a week, let's say on Tuesday and Thursday, I just got out of my civ lecture, so I know all about this. Tuesday, you would have an hour in the lecture hall. Thursday, an hour in the lecture hall. The professor will present a lecture, hopefully an engaging one, on whatever text the students are going to read that week. And then on the next day, for me, that's Friday, that's tomorrow, students will take that lecture knowledge, they'll have read the text for the week, they'll bring it into the seminar, and they will then lead the seminar. That at least is the ideal here. So as you can see, 16 students, these are small class sizes. So every student has a chance to participate. Students take the text, they discuss them, they might respond to some of my questions, they make connections between the texts and issues that are going on in the present day. So here's an example of the lecture halls we have in Rouen in a normal semester, and I'm very much hoping that fall will be that normal semester, fall 2021. Your instructor will be in this hall or one very much like it, and you'll be watching the lecture. As you can see, these rooms are very well equipped with technology, so most lecturers augment their presentations with, say, a PowerPoint or something like that. And here's a view of one of the seminar rooms. It's in this semester, we're not in this particular seminar room because, as you can see, these chairs are a little bit too close together. We're trying to keep apart for our in-person classes, so we're in somewhat larger rooms. But again, in fall 2021, I hope, fingers crossed, you'll be in a room like this. And as you can see, it's a round table, and the premise behind a round table is that no one is in charge. The professor is not in charge. I see myself as a facilitator of the discussion. And indeed, any seminar in which I don't hear my voice, for me, is a successful seminar. Because again, the goal is to get students to lead the seminar. And because of the small class sizes, another sort of auxiliary advantage of this is students will get to know their professors very well. You might be in a very large intro class in your major, for instance, in that first year, but you're in a very small class with your civ professors. You'll get to know and be able to work with a member of the faculty right from the get-go. And that really helps for building those professor-teacher relationships. Students have someone they can come to if they need a letter of recommendation, for instance. So yeah, having those small class sizes is really excellent in that regard. And here's a view of our study room, the Fiandella Great Room in Rouen. As you can see some students here. They're enjoying the quiet and peace. It's a really just beautiful space in which to work. And this room really looks at its best in the winter, actually, when they have the Christmas tree up and there's a fire going on and everything's all cozy, and you can go in here and do some study and studying and prepare for your next class. Students sometimes colloquially call it the Hogwarts room because it has that kind of feel to it, like something out of Harry Potter. I'd like to conclude my presentation with just a quote from the civil rights leader, Congressman John Lewis, who, as you know, passed away this summer. He published an essay in the New York Times, and it was the last essay he wrote. And I'm going to excerpt just a brief paragraph from the essay, because I think it's really important and it really connects to what I'm saying here is the value of this class. Congressman Lewis writes, "You must also study and learn the lessons of history, because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time." That, to me, is why we teach this course here at Providence College. The idea that going to the past is not sort of a retreat from the present, but rather a way, a necessary condition of engaging with the present. For instance, in my own DWC class just a few weeks ago, we studied the French Revolution. We looked at the Declaration of the Rights of Man and other French Revolution documents. But students made connections between that and the social protests of the year 2020. So they're taking what they're learning in class and thinking about today's problems and perceiving connections, perceiving the ways in which they fit together. And as I say, this is the difference that the DWC program provides. Other schools don't have a historically based core program like this. This will make students better students. It will make you better writers, better thinkers, but ultimately it will also make you better citizens as you engage in the challenges of the 21st century. All right, so I'm about done here. Feel free to, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat room right now. I'd be happy to respond to it. But let me also just conclude by giving you my contact info. I'm at Moffatt@providence.edu. You can find me on the website. I love to talk about the program and the good things that we do here. So please drop me a line if you have any questions or concerns. I'd be happy to talk to either students or parents about the program. Now I'm going to pass it back to Matt.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Moffatt. It's always like whenever I hear about development in Western Civ, I was an English major, so it was really something that I took to like very quickly on campus. But I think it's a great way to demonstrate just how interdisciplinary the approach is at PC. You know, having this team taught class for 2 years is something that I think is a really great advantage for students that they might not necessarily be realizing until after the program is done sometimes. But I thank you for showcasing a little bit more of that program today. And who knows, maybe I will show up at one of those colloquium classes and I can,
I hope
just sit in
so.
the back.
You're always welcome to my mat. I noticed there's a question in the Q&A. How Maeve asks, how does study abroad and or internships function with these courses? I mean, of course, that's going to be a question for everyone. I would say with regard to DWC, one of the things that we're working on is a DWC colloquium that is wrapped up with the study abroad experience. We've been calling it Civ in London. We were going to pilot it next semester because of the international COVID crisis. We've deferred it for a year, so it's going to start in spring 2022. But we're hoping this will be an ongoing thing, and students can apply in the second semester of their sophomore year, take the DWC colloquium in a host city such as London, and take the class while also, of course, having this immersive pedagogical experience. So at least with regard to DWC, that's the answer to your question, Maeve. But I'm sure others will have answers to that as well.
Great. Thanks again, Professor Moffatt, and I hope you have a good rest of the week.
Yeah, you too. See you later.
All right, so moving along, we have 2 additional professors that have been gracious enough to help us out today. So Professor Morton is from the Public and Community Service Department, and Professor Cibulco is a professor within the Global Studies major on campus. So I think this is a great opportunity to hear from them. They'll give a little bit of an overview of their programs, and then we can open it up to some Q&A at the end. So I don't know who really wants to go first. I think Professor Morton, so you're in the top left of my screen, so my top left bias will just allow me to ask you to go first, and then we'll have Professor Cibulco join in at the end. Oh, let me unmute your, yeah, there we go.
So I don't know if this is allowed at this point, but given the relatively small number of us, would it be possible just to get a quick introduction to the participants, just kind of hear what their interests are a little bit?
Yeah, I can kind of promote everyone to a panelist, and then so as a student, you'll have to then add your video in at the once you get promoted as a panelist. So why don't we do that? And then we will go from there. All right, everyone has been promoted. So if you would like to turn on your video and introduce yourself, we can do that. And then we'll continue.
Yeah, great, thank you. And by introductions, I think Dr. Cibulco and I would just be interested in kind of, why are you interested in the college? Why these particular majors or this kind of major? Where do you see yourself trying to go with it, if that's even on the horizon at this point? So just give us a little frame of reference.
Oh, just I don't think we can turn our cameras on. I think it's unable to.
Okay, here we go. Now you should be able to do it now because I just made everyone a co-host.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
Oh, there we go. All these Zoom functions, you'd think I'd get it by this point, but there's just still some kinks that we got to work out. All right. So Margaret, can you go first since you're like the left-hand side for me? So how about if you want to introduce yourself and say where you're from and then what you're thinking of majoring in when you get to college.
Hi, so I'm Margaret. I live in Glastonbury, but I go to Northwest Catholic in West Hartford. I am interested in majoring in global studies and minoring in political science. Excellent.
Great. Maeve, can you go next?
Yeah, I'm Maeve. I live in New York City, and I'm hoping in majoring in something involving public health and minoring in, I know Providence is making a new minor of communications.
Correct. Yes. Great. Alexa or Zoe, are you there as well?
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Oh,
Great. Oh, sorry. Alexa, can you go next, and then we'll have Zoe wrap it up.
I'm sorry. My name
That's
is
okay.
Alexa. I'm from Mooresville, North Carolina, and I go to Woodlawn School. I'm thinking about majoring in global studies and minoring in Spanish.
Fantastic. Okay, last but not least, Zoe.
Hey, I don't know what's going on with my camera,
That's okay.
but my name is Zoe. I'm thinking about majoring in global studies. I'm from Miami, Florida, and I go to Ransom Everglades.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we have a lot of global studies interest here, so that's good. And Professor Cibulco is the expert in the room. So I think if you want to talk a little bit about the program, and then we'll do some more Q&A.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that Professor Morton is in public and community service, and there's sometimes some overlap between our programs as global studies departments and public and community service in terms of our majors. So we find that a lot of our global studies majors are also often, not all of them, often interested in public and community service. And so some of the origins of who we are as a departments, you might see some similarities. And I don't know, Professor Morton, I think you concur with some of that as well. So while there's differences, there's sometimes some overlaps. So let me tell you a little bit about global studies, and then and it might still make sense for Professor Morton to also jump in on some of this stuff afterwards as well. But so I would say that global studies I'm in two different departments. So I'm also a sociologist, and global studies has a really unique pedagogy, and I want to begin with that. And so one of the things that I think you'd begin to see about global studies classes is that they really are dialogues, and they are spaces where we want students engaged in their learning and passionate about their learning, exploring the things that they're interested in. And we might provide some templates for how that learning is going to take place, but it's very much a dialogue, and sort of maybe the typical model of education that's sort of like the lecture and the all-knowing professor and the student who doesn't have a lot of life experiences and knowledge. We're kind of blowing that up the first time you come into the classroom. And I think it's really important to begin with that pedagogy of what makes global studies. And I actually think public and community service fairly similar to one another. And so we begin there because all of you have life experiences, knowledges, understandings of the world. And are they completely well-formed yet? I mean, they're formed, but are they completely expansive? No, you haven't had all the life experiences. And so global studies begins there. And we really think in the Intro to Global Studies class about what is globalization. Some students think it's a really new phenomenon. Is it new, right? And what are the ways in which global systems, capitalism, politics, political economies, how are those things interconnected? And how do they shape people's lives? How are our lives right here on this Zoom right now interconnected to people's around the world? And what does it mean for our environment, and what's the reciprocal relationship for all those things? And so we begin with systems and people's experiences, and we think about the interconnections between those things. Who has power, who doesn't have power? And if we want to make change, how does change happen? What can we learn from past modes of change, past social movements? How does change, is it through policies at the top? Is it through people on the bottom? Like, how does change happen? And I think we begin those questions in Intro to Global Studies. The next part of the curriculum goes a little bit deeper into that. And then there's a couple of things that make global studies unique. We will also try to give you some research skills so that you have some opportunities to maybe do your own independent work, collaborate with faculty, collaborate with each other. We sometimes, similar to like pedagogy, we might blow up the traditional research model so that we can think about how people we engage research are also knowledge producers themselves and not just people to be observed. But we try to give you those kind of skills. And then you get to make your own concentration. And so Margaret, I'm trying to remember what you said you were interested in coming in first. And can you remind me some of the things you were interested in global studies?
Yeah, I was gonna minor in political science.
Okay, so you might be choosing something, you choose 4 classes that have sort of a global focus and maybe a political science focus. And so while your other global studies peers, I'm looking at Maeve, I don't think you specifically said you were interested in global studies, but let's say you found yourself there, it was public health. Maeve's 4 concentration courses would probably be around global health, whereas Margaret, yours are going to be around something different, more poli-sci, maybe international relations, maybe something else. And so what we try to give is foundational courses that make all of the global studies students experience, but then a little bit of flexibility so that you can really hone in on what you're most interested in that concentration. And then everybody has what we call a study away experience in global studies. And so for many students, that means a traditional semester abroad or even a year abroad. For other students, it might mean a global immersion class. So they are part of a class that takes a week or 2 week or 3 week long trip with one another, but you're learning about the same concepts and ideas. Or it might mean you stay in the United States, but you have a study away experience in California at the University of Berkeley for a semester. Or you decide to go live on an indigenous reservation, and that's sort of a study away experience, right? Or it could be right here in Providence. And Providence, Rhode Island, and PC are 2 different things. We're one and the same and interconnected. And yet so many of our students never explore Providence, and they're right here. And so study away could be right here in Providence. And we're trying to think about how to pilot programs like that. And then your senior year, you do a year-long capstone. And I can talk more about that if people are interested. And I can also talk about what kind of areas our graduates go into, but right now I feel like I've talked a lot, and so I want to turn things over to someone else.
Maybe just add a couple of comments. As Professor Spolko said, there's quite a number of students who either do a double major, global studies, public service, or a minor in public service. And we actually have a lot of health policy management majors doing a public service minor also and I think there's a few reasons for that. One is it's a very experientially grounded major or minor, public services. And a lot of the community-based experience gives people research skills, relationship skills, social networks, political networks that are really instructive while you're getting introduced to them, but also really useful as you're graduating and figuring out what's next. But what I was thinking of as Kara was speaking is a couple of students that we've worked with in common. One who just graduated this past spring did a really extraordinary project on immigration, undocumented students in particularly undocumented students at Providence College. And he looked at what kind of 3 dimensions of it. How did that portion of their identity really shape their experience? What kind of support did they need to be able to succeed despite all kinds of challenges in their lives? And then he also took a pretty deep look at what were some of the institutional and policy changes that needed to happen just to remove the barriers, because nobody should have to experience those, right? And what I think is particularly exciting about his project, number one, it's led him to graduate school, and he's already given several public lectures about it. But he started that research project really as a sophomore in college, the end of his sophomore year, and was in a course that I was teaching, an independent study with Professor Cibulco, and then that turned into a global studies course and another public service course. And by the time he was in his capstone seminars in public service and global studies, he'd already been at it for about 1.5 years, and he used those 2 seminars to produce something that I would say, I mean, it's not quite publishable doctoral level work, but it's really a huge step in that direction. Like it's amazing for an undergraduate project. And I also would be as bold as to say, I don't think that that's particularly rare for the 2 departments, both the collaboration, but really the belief that students have this, they can find their passion and get the right kind of intellectual support and opportunity and the mentoring that they need, both from inside the campus, but working with community partners outside of the campus. we just believe they can produce really, really useful, important work. So the only thing I would add about the public service department is that a phrase that I heard just lately from an alum is that the department is really focused on working with community partners to co-create solutions to pressing world problems. And the kinds of things, and I think this would be a similar sort of list for global studies as well. I was thinking, so what have some of our alums gone on to do after graduation? And one of the public service alums that I kind of feel a little sorry for right now, because her job is not a lot of fun these days, but she is the planning director for Rhode Island Public Transportation Authority. So she's looking at the entire statewide transportation system for Rhode Island and trying to do things like figure out the bus system. And the politics of that, because of the budget constraints, are just brutal. But she's brilliant at it and really committed to the public dimensions of that. We've got in both departments a number of our alums who've gone on to be these amazing organic, sustainable farmers in cities and also at scale out in much larger farming operations. One of our alums is the senior data analyst for the Rhode Island Secretary of State. So every big decision that the Secretary of State is making about how she's going to use her resources and her political power, political authority, is driven by basically data stories that this alum has put together. And she did a public service major. She probably would have done global studies if it was available. She's been out for a while, but she also in sociology did a lot of things around statistics and sort of data analysis that became the track within her public service major. The only other kinds of things I guess I would say that what I'm thinking about, there are two other alums who are really deeply involved in the school reform process at a high bureaucratic level in Providence. And the Providence school system was just taken over by the state, and it's a train wreck, slow motion train wreck. And these two alums are really at the heart of figuring out some solutions to that. And their particular skill sets are not some of it's technical knowledge that they've picked up. They're really pretty brilliant thinkers and theorists about education reform, but it's largely their ability to move through really complicated relationships with low-income communities, community meetings, all the way up to the governor's office, and be able to do all of that really graciously. And I think, again, global studies, public service, the experiential components, the cross-cultural components are really deliberate in setting people up for that. So I'm kind of like Professor Cibulco. I've said a lot, so I'll shut up. And just if you've got questions or comments, I'm really curious to know more about you. So anything you'd care to share there as well.
I just want to say I'm really interested in your questions too. The one thing I didn't mention about our curriculum is you do have to take a foreign language as part of the global studies curriculum, because we believe that we live in a global world. We should have basic understanding of communicating across cultures. So that's one piece of the curriculum. And I'm happy to tell you what our alum do or anything else, but I really want to hear what you want to hear from us.
Yeah, just before our students get the chance to ask some questions, I feel like people ask me all the time when I'm traveling and when I'm meeting with prospective students, like, what do I do with X major, or what can I do with X major? And I mean, the cop-out answer, even though it's true, is really anything, because I feel like students that are entering college have a lot of pressure many times from family members or from people that they know that you have to be this particular major in order to do this particular thing when you graduate. And what you do for a career or as a job doesn't necessarily relate to what you studied in college for your undergrad. And so I think, majors like global studies and public and community service are great examples of that, where you are learning a lot about different things, but you can do so many things in terms of your job or your career after PC with programs like that. And really, those are not just the two programs where anything really is possible. You can do anything with an English major. You can do anything with a history major. But I think that these programs in particular are great showcases for having a liberal arts background and a well-rounded education and being able to do a lot of different things once you graduate from Providence. So again, thank you to our professors. Those are really great overviews.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments, Matt. And if I can add to them, though, and I think this is true for both programs, it's a really good liberal arts core for sure, but it's also because of the experiential component in both majors and the really strong emphasis on engaged learning and the tracks that the students have. With a public service major, you can graduate with between 500 and 2,000 hours of practical experience in an area that you're interested in, and a big social, semi-professional network of people. And there were probably 5 or 6 years ago now, we worked with the alumni office to do a survey of alumni over the years. And one of the interesting things to come out of that is that public service majors reported that they had less anxiety at graduation than typical majors from Providence College. I would suspect that the same thing is true for global studies. It's not that they're not worried about graduating and what's next, and like especially now in the pandemic, it's like, oh my God, like. But the reason was they had mentors, they had a social network, and they had been pushed really, really hard in the middle of their undergraduate studies to define what they were interested in. Really, and so it's both true that you never know where it's going to take you, but they're starting off with a very clear sense of what's the next thing after graduation. Maybe not 2 steps out, but the next step is really clear. And I think that combination of really rich liberal arts perspective, love of learning, curiosity, all that, and this sort of really grounded challenge about like, so what? Like, what are you going to do with it? Is really just a really nice match.
To piggyback on that real quickly is that the community and networks that form in these major, like at this point, I don't know who has more majors because like Professor Morton's, I think public and community service has been around longer, but now the number of majors in global studies is a little bit larger. But I'm teaching the senior capstone right now. And all my students there's 28 of them, and they're like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do with our lives, right? And especially in this pandemic. And I'm co-teaching it with a former student of mine who's now 30, and she is out in the real world. And so we're co-teaching together. And she reached out and she just put out like an SOS on Facebook to like our global studies Facebook page. And we had 80 responses from students like, oh, we'll come back to your class and tell them what we're doing now, what our path was like. And it was amazing. Some of them are, in Ghana right now doing like international development work. Other people are here in the United States working for the state. Others did Peace Corps for a while. Others are in public health, and others are working for Rhode Island State Commerce, right? And so one person's in medical school now. He's 31 and he worked as an EMT, and he discovered his like passion for medicine, and he ran a podcast for a while. And so it's really cool to see the communities that form and the networks and the ways that we really mentor each other so that you're finding that pathway along the way. So I really appreciated what Professor Morton and Matthew had to say. Thank you. Do you have questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, knowing that we're going to hear from some current students a little bit later on, but I think this is a great opportunity if any of you participants have questions for our professors, either about something specific about their major or even something about PC in general that we can help out with.
I have a question.
Sure. You look like you were in deep thought, Margaret. So this is going to be a good one.
So I have kind of 2 questions. What kind of internships are available, and how soon can you start the research process?
Oh, those are great questions, right? And I think 2 things. One is that internships sometimes can happen right off the gate sometimes. I mean, like it depends sort of, I've seen first year students get involved in internships. Sometimes it's from a work study. Sometimes it's because you're in a class, you know, as Professor Morton was saying, if you end up in a 101, you're often going to be doing engagement in the communities in some capacity. And you might find an organization that you really connect with and you're like, okay, next semester, can I intern for you, right? And so that can happen sometimes right out the gate. The other thing is, depending on what you know of your interest areas and getting involved in research, there's a couple different ways to get involved in research. I've had first year students apply for what we have is called an undergraduate summer research program. And so they can do undergraduate research their first summer. After the first year, you find a mentor, you put in the application. And so that could be a really great way to start the independent work, is having that opportunity to get money to go ahead and do your research that year. There's also opportunities for you to collaborate with a faculty member on their own research. And that is even designed as a research class or sometimes as an independent study. And you might just get to know your faculty and what they're doing. Sometimes being proactive, and you don't have a class with them yet, but sending them an email and saying, hey, I'd love to come to your office hours and talk about what you're doing. I'm interested in this sort of stuff. And so it's never too early, right, to get involved in the research processes. I actually am doing a research class with 3 students, and they started when they were sophomores, and we're getting ready to write a journal article together, and we might publish that. And so, but that's a different sort of thing. Whereas I've also done a lot of engaged research. It's the students' independent project. They're the one, and they're engaged in the community. And it's really cool to see those come to fruition, similar to what I think Professor Morton was speaking about before with a student around immigration issues. But we certainly have many more examples in many more different ways.
The only thing I'd add about internships, Margaret, is it's a pretty generic phrase in some ways. And there's a formal internship that you can do that's actually a course that you get credit for. You have a faculty advisor, it's a job description, you know, so it's pretty formalized. And most of those are about 120 hours or more of field experience as a part of it. But there are quite a lot of other opportunities on campus that can get you really deeply involved in something that might or might not have credit with them, that in a range of formality. One of them, for example, there's a public service institute on campus in addition to the major, and they have a program called the Feinstein Fellows Program. And you get into that and you do 6 or 8 hours a week with a community site, you get a small stipend or a small scholarship, an acknowledgement to that, and you have some control about who it is you're doing that work with. There's a program that goes with it that's about your personal leadership development, but it's not for credit. It's really more of a student development kind of thing. You can use work study, as Professor Cibulco said, and just have a job off campus that you're getting paid for, but you're showing up in a community organization and doing work with them every week. And then there's just students who fall in love with a particular organization and they volunteer with it just on their own alongside of their studies. And you know, all of those are really valuable. But what I'm getting at really is I think when you start to explore, when you say the word internship to somebody, they might think something really specific, and you might instead be asking about how do I really get involved in the things I care about? Yeah.
And
go ahead, sorry.
The only other thing I would add about research real quick is beyond, because I think he did a great job speaking about some of the broad ways we can conceptualize internships, what exists, is that there are other options. Like once we're allowed to travel again and there's conferences that happen, you can apply for travel funding to go to those conferences and present at undergraduate panels or even at formal panels. There's other opportunities for funding for students. And I know I have one of my students who was a global studies major And she did this really awesome project on the experiences of student athletes around their issues of identity, gender, sexuality, race, and stuff. And that project she got funding for. She did it over the course of a year and a half, and now she got a full ride to graduate school. So she's getting her PhD now, and the entire 7 years is paid at a top 20 program. And it's because of those kinds of research experiences that allowed her to get into it.
We've seen under or incoming freshmen over the last couple of years be a lot more aware of student research. I feel like when I was a student, I mean, I graduated in 06 and I knew some of my science major friends that were doing research, but I never really thought of doing research on my own. But now we're getting so many more questions from high school juniors and high school seniors about what kinds of research opportunities exist for me on your campus. And I think that for a lot of people, they tend to associate large state universities with research. And that's certainly true. There's a lot of research happening there. But actually, about 40% of our students across our campus are conducting research. And I think that's a great number. And that number is only getting bigger. And I think that, again, speaks to the strength of these programs that are supplementing what you're doing in the classroom with, as Professor Morton said, a lot of practical experience outside the classroom, as well as plenty of internship and research opportunities that are happening right here on campus. So this has been great. I appreciate both of your help, Professor Cibulco and Professor Morton. We are currently, I have Professor Mulderry on cue next to talk about the Center for Engaged Learning. But again, thank you very much for your help, and we will talk to you soon.
I was just going to say, if anybody has questions, shoot emails. Hopefully you can pass our information along. You can always follow.
Absolutely. I will do that as soon as we conclude.
All right. Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Yep, likewise. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Okay, so I will make Professor Mulderry a co-host. Don't mind the car whooshing by my window. It's pretty loud over here. Okay, so hi there, Dara. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad. I was trying to figure out how to get my video up and was having trouble. I'm just gonna shut the shade.
Yeah, sure thing. All right, so glad to have you with us. We have talked a little bit about development of Western Civ, and we've also learned a little bit more about specifically the Global Studies program, as well as the Public and Community Service major on campus. And I think one of the themes that we've been hearing about is the fact that both of those programs provide a lot of hands-on practical experience for our students. And I think a way that what we were just talking about actually was student opportunities for both internships and research. So I think this is a great segue for you to talk about the Center for Engaged Learning and to maybe give some examples about what some students have been doing on campus.
Okay, I do have a PowerPoint, and I'm not going to go through absolutely every single slide of it. So there'll be, I'll start moving fast through some of them. But hello to Maeve, Margaret, Alexa, Zoe. Are there more? Is my
that's who we got right now.
Oh, that's who you got right now. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I had the screen. And feel free to stop me at any point. But let me begin by saying, just so you know a little bit more about me, I'm in my 13th year at Providence College, and when I arrived, all I did was be a history professor. Okay, so my PhD is in history, my master's was in multiple social sciences and philosophy, and what I've been teaching for 12 years are a whole bevy of US history classes, plus development of Western Civ. So if you end up having any questions about either of those programs, feel free to ask me. The Center for Engaged Learning is newer to PC than I am. And what it is the Center for Engaged Learning doesn't have its own set of professors. It's made up of people who are all doing other things at PC, but it's a way to coordinate efforts by all of our departments to help students advance towards doing original work in their field, meaning they're actually contributing to knowledge. So after they get the foundational knowledge in their main field, they really learn how to be a biologist or be a historian. And so we have a once a year celebration of student original work, and it's in April. That was always in person. This past spring, of course, it was it was online, and probably this year it'll be online, and after that in person again. But we also assist students with financial aid if they have extra research they want to do and they need some money to travel to the archives or some money for lab stuff, okay? So just know there's a financial bit and there's a lot of mentoring. Let me go into a slideshow that was put together by the director of the Center for Engaged Learning. You'll see her name. I'm the associate director, sorry. So Dr. Jennifer Van Riet, you may have to move your Zoom screens to see the full name, is a psychologist, whereas I'm a historian, and she right now is the director of the Center for Engaged Learning. So one of our initiatives is just about helping ease the transition to college. And I haven't mentioned this initiative yet. This initiative will be most interesting to you because it's for starting out. We offer a 1-credit course. It's not mandatory. We offer a 1-credit course to incoming freshmen fall of their first year that helps them stay coordinated in all of their courses. And it's the name of the class is Introduction to Providence College. So this year I'm doing writing tips. I'm doing how to handle stress. I'm doing how to do research in newspapers. I'm just doing all sorts of skills and advisement around performing at your best in all your classes and also staying healthy in a more holistic way. Okay, so the class Introduction to PC is that 1-credit class that will be available next fall as well. So that's an option for incoming freshmen. We also, this gets into the part about holistic, that we really look at faculty who are helping students stay resilient and aid and abet them getting the word out to everybody. A second initiative is providing engaging experiences in and out of the classroom, often hands-on. Okay, so let me just go through a few of these and you'll get an idea. I just want to hold on a sec, guys. My screen's being a little funny. I need to move faces out of the way. There we go. I'll just give you a chance to read that slide. So a catchphrase here that really comes out of deep thought is reflective practice. So what we at the Center for Engaged Learning try to get all professors to do is guide their students in taking a pause and reflecting on the work they're doing, both inside their classes and in their extracurriculars, work and play, and think, oh, what is inspiring me? What careers are coming to mind? What new extracurriculars might I want to engage in? So by asking people to stop and reflect, that they end up building a more mindful path that fits them and makes every semester very alive for them. So that's reflective practice, is that you keep taking a pause. We really emphasize that. This is just giving you an idea of some of our classes. Lots of reflective practice in the arts as well. And here's, this gives you an idea of some of the interdisciplinary classes where there's conscious engagement and reflective practice. This is a course taught by a theologian, Dr. Dana Dillon, with a historian. And it's a colloquium on racism and theologies of liberation. Every student at PC who's in the Development of Western Civ, what we call Big Civ stream, their 4th semester, 2nd semester, sophomore year, takes an interdisciplinary colloquium, and the offerings are very diverse and reflective practice is emphasized in all of them. Very recently, there's been a coordinated effort to create a new minor connected to business. It's about innovation, and the Center for Engaged Learning supports that too. Then here is something I spend a lot of time on, Initiative 3, and I'm going to stop with Initiative 3. This will be the last one I go through in this presentation. So in addition to being Associate Director of the Center for Engaged Learning and teaching my courses in History and Development of Western Civ, I'm the Director of fellowships that are nationally competitive. So what I do is I get in touch with students starting usually their second year when they declare their major. I get in touch with them to keep them aware of opportunities, for instance, to do a really interesting summer internship that is nationally competitive to get. Okay, so an example would be the Harvard laboratories where cancer research is done runs a competition for talented science majors to spend a summer in these labs being mentored by some of the top scientists in cancer research. And it's called an Amgen experience. I not only tell students about that opportunity, I then become their coach as they apply. I read drafts of their application essay. I give them feedback. I often go through 3, 4, 5 drafts. And there are other nationally competitive fellowships. You might have heard of a Fulbright that you can get when you graduate. So I contact juniors and I say, look, if you want me to coach you over the summer before senior year and how to get this Fulbright application to really sparkle, I will go through 4 drafts with you over the summer so that when your senior year begins, it's all done. You're going to put in this great application and then you're going to use those application materials to apply for other things too. Okay, so that's helping you get out into the world and compete with other students and graduates all over the country. And I continue to do that for alums. So up to 5 years after you graduate, you can get in touch with me at the Center for Engaged Learning, and I will help you with those applications, even though your education at PC is already behind you. So I know that's a lot to digest and I'm talking fast because I figure you guys have other stuff to do as well. Let me hit stop share and see if you have any questions. So I could give you more details, but it would just like, I think that gives you an idea. Any questions at all? No, we're good?
Yeah, you did a good job explaining.
Oh, good. Thank you, Maeve.
Great. Thank you very much, Dara. I appreciate the help and assistance. We're actually going to wrap up today with a student panel, kind of so that we have the opportunity to hear from some current PC students about their experiences, both inside and outside the classroom. So thanks again for logging in, and I'll give everyone your contact info at the end of the program.
That would be great. And if you have questions about Civ too, I'm always happy to answer those, and that I love the program and I've adored teaching in it. And I can tell you why if you're interested. And I don't know where you guys all are, but it is about 78 degrees here today. And boy, does that feel nice.
Yep, it definitely is. I'm like sweating a little bit at my house and I'm like, it's October 22nd. Like, what is that about?
That's amazing. Okay. Have a great day, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Dara. Take care. Okay, so to wrap up today, I mean, you've learned a lot about PC already, probably more than you were even like bargaining to learn about at the moment. But I think that it's always the best resource for you in this college search process is always going to be to connect with current students. So we have some current students here with us, thankfully, that will help us out. So I'll have each of them introduce themselves, and then why don't we do name, your major, where you're from, and if you want to give a fun fact about yourself, I feel like those are always helpful too. So Madison, you want to start off?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Madison. I am a junior global studies and sociology double major from Long Island, New York. And my fun fact is Cereba is one of my closest friends on campus.
Look at that. I didn't even, that was totally unplanned that you know, we just kind of set it up like that.
Madison, I love you. I guess I'll go next. Hey everyone, my name is Cereba Fafana. I'm also a junior. I'm a psychology major in the neuroscience program, and I'm also on the pre-med track. And my fun fact is that I was born, like when my teeth were growing in, I have like my wisdom teeth came out. So like my wisdom teeth are like out too. So when I had my braces, they just like aligned my wisdom teeth so I don't have to get them off.
That's definitely the most interesting fun fact I've ever heard. That's a good one. All right. So I think, a lot of those current students that are here today, or the prospective students that are here today, have an interest in global studies. So Madison, I know that since you're a global studies major, can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been like within the program? And then Suriba, we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the general PC experience a little bit later on.
Yeah, so I came in as a declared global studies major, which has been kind of one of the best decisions I've ever made. I absolutely love the major and every aspect of it. But did they hear from Kara before? Was Kara here?
Yes.
Dr. Spolko? Yeah.
Yep.
So Kara is my advisor, and she's also I've taken like 17 million classes with her, but she's my research professor right now too. So I think what I like to say about global studies is you have the option to explore every interest that you may have. And within the major, you have opportunities to take it even further than just the classroom. So for example, I came in and started taking classes on immigration and learned that that's something I'm super passionate about. And for the past year now, I've been able to do research on my own with Dr. Spolko. And so she's writing a book currently, and I've been her research assistant, transcribing her data, analyzing it, and turning it into stories. And we just decided, I think it was yesterday, that we're gonna publish a journal article. So me and my two research partners will be like the co-authors of a research article, which is pretty cool, be published authors before you even come out of college. So that's something that's really awesome about global studies. But my other, I think, aspect that I like to highlight a lot is the different classroom setting in global studies compared to every other major, I think. So global studies, it's not your typical classroom where there's going to be a professor at the head of the room and you're going to be sitting in the seat and they're going to lecture at you for 75 minutes, however long your class is. It's more of learning from each other. So instead of having a professor stand at the front of the classroom, usually you're sitting in a circle, and it's a lot of dialogue and small group work and community work. And it's a lot of learning from the experiences of other people and bringing in your own experiences to kind of guide others. It's something completely different than anything I've ever seen in a classroom. And it's truly amazing. It's so cool. And you build such a community through, I think, the sharing of experiences like we do. And I think my global studies family, I mean, I just call them a family, but they really are. They're my family on campus now. We all have group chats, and it's just so fun. So
awesome.
If you all have questions.
It's funny because whenever in like a normal year, when I'm traveling and like going on the road and meeting with students, we always invite some professors to our office so that they can tell us a little bit about what's new in their program and what they have in store for the upcoming year. And there's always a couple different programs that whenever we hear from them, it makes us like want to go back and major in that program. And I think global studies is definitely one of those. Sorry, but not to I was an English major, so I tended to stay as far away from the sciences as humanly possible. So that's just my own personal bias, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think, learning. So one of the other parts of Providence College that we've learned about today was Professor Moffatt, who's the director of Civ, gave us kind of a general overview of the program and kind of the ins and outs and explained a little bit about the colloquium semester. But Suriba, I'm kind of curious from your experience, as someone who has a major that's outside of, I guess, what would be considered in the humanities for development of Western Civ, how did that class play a role in your Providence College career?
Yeah, so I actually ended up loving Civ. I was very, 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 I don't know if I told you I was nervous, but I was very nervous about Civ. I'm a science person. I love science. I am a history kind of like nut, so I was kind of like excited for it. But I would say coming in, I had Dr. Rousseau. She is part of the history department. She is amazing. I went to her office hours. She offered what was kind of required, but it was really helpful. She offered like an intro to writing for Civ meeting. So she had our entire section come in and she just taught us how to write a Civ essay and learning how to do that type of writing. And understanding what's being asked of me, and not only seeing how Civ is like not just about history, it's philosophy, it's religion, it's science, it's all these different things that we don't really take for granted when we think about history. That's what we got to talk about in Civ. And as we went through it, especially sophomore year, where we did more modern history, and in colloquiums we actually got to choose what you want to do for your last semester at Civ, I found myself being, all right, like, well, what's some things that I can take out of this, even though I'm not a humanities person? What are some other interests that I could possibly explore? So I took a sociology class. I'm taking a women's studies class right now, because some of the stuff that I realized when I took it was like, hey, I'm really interested in like society and like what goes on and like how do social attitudes change throughout history. So I was like, this is really cool. So hopefully, I'm trying to get it settled right now. I'm thinking about doing a women's studies minor, and that's something that I will directly correlate from my experience with Civ, because I got to learn about culture and how that plays a role. And my colloquium, I took a newer one. It was called Development of Western Africa. And we just talked about Western African history throughout the semester. It was amazing. As a West African myself, it was awesome to be able to like learn more about my culture, ask like my mom, my grandma questions about like how they grew up in West Africa. So a lot of my Civ experience was kind of my own. And that's what I think makes Civ, in a way, like a part of your PC journey.
Great. Okay.
I
So
can
I have
add something to that.
Oh, go ahead. Sure. Yeah. No, sorry, Madison.
It's okay. So I have a different experience, obviously, in Civ, because I'm more of a social science person. So it correlates more to Civ. But something that I really took away from my Civ experience was interacting with people that I normally wouldn't in just my major classes. So I was in honor Civ, so it was a really small group of people, but the majority of people were bio majors or like finance majors, and I would have never taken class with people like that before. So I think what Civ does, which is so cool, is just bringing together all of these different perspectives and ideas into one classroom. And it's like, it's really fun to be able to see, I guess, how other people think that don't have the same kind of brain as you. So yeah.
So I have one more question from my end, and then I kind of want to turn it over to our prospective students so that they can learn a little bit more about PC. But I think one of the favorite questions that I get when I'm meeting with visiting students is to like, they want to know, what are your favorite traditions on campus? And I feel like that's a great question, but it's also one that I don't necessarily want to give all of it away. Like, I feel like half of the fun is finding out these traditions on your own, like organically as a student. But I think it's also kind of helpful just to know a little bit about student life before you get here. So yeah, if you want to share just like your favorite tradition on campus, I think that's a good question to end on before we turn it over to them.
Madison, do you want to go first?
Do you want to go, or do you want me to go? It's okay.
I don't know, because I don't want to like give anything away. But like, I will say, so I, as a freshman RA, I help with orientation, and orientation is like such like a whirlwind. I will say there's a lot of like free stuff, lots of free merch. One thing that's really exciting is that I think the Alumni Association does like a thing with all of like the first year students, and they're like legit orientation leaders just throwing a candy and t-shirts, and there's like food trucks outside, and it's a great time. So I think that's one of my favorite things, is seeing everyone like back on campus, especially people, the freshmen moving in after like a long day of meetings and stuff, being able to like hang out, and like everyone's like on the Slavin lawn, and then there's music, and it's just good vibes, good times.
So I think one of my favorite traditions at PC is the black and white ball we have every year, because it's a time that everybody, no matter what class you are, everybody gets together, everybody gets dressed up, and it's so fun because I feel like you're not really ever in the same place as everybody else from the surrounding grades. So it's really fun to see everyone all come together and everyone dance together, and it's so fun to get dressed up. You don't get to do that often in college. Most of the days I wear my pajamas to class. So the fact that I can dress up and feel pretty, it's really fun.
Wearing pajamas is always encouraged. Doesn't matter where you are. So yeah, I mean, one of the good things about the pandemic is that I wear pajamas pretty much all the time. So that's a bonus in my book. Okay, so we want to hear from you as prospective students. Obviously, like I said, talking with current students is always a great resource, but are there any questions that you really want to know, either about the student experience or something that we've covered a little bit today that you want to know a little bit more about? Yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
So I have an experience where I want to make sure that I know, like, what is the community like? How are the students like? And from what I saw today, I really like the professors. They all have great attitudes, and you guys do as well. So how would you define like the student community?
So I always like to tell this story because I think it just represents PC really well. But when I was a freshman, I obviously meet a bunch of people, but I met this one kid. His name is Sean, and we were both talking about how we got to PC, why we chose PC, and his story just stuck with me. It's so funny. His mom did a smile test at every school that they went to. So when they were touring, she would just smile at students, and she would count the number of people that would smile back at her. And PC had the most smiles back. And ultimately that's how he came to PC, is because his mom felt such a community at PC, not even him, his mom. And I think that's very representative of PC's community. They always say like friars hold doors, and we really do. Everybody always holds doors for each other. And I know that's like such a silly little thing, but I think it kind of shows like how strong the Friar family is.
Yeah, and just like add on to Madison's point, definitely during the pandemic and being here this semester shows the sentiments and the testaments that we are a very strong community. Like the amount of emails that we've gotten from professors, Dean Sears, like everyone just like making sure like, are you okay? Like, what can we do? Even like Madison like will like text me like once a like day, be like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Everyone wants to make sure you're okay. Everyone wants to make sure that you are doing okay, and especially professors. They really want to know that students are not only learning, but they're growing as people. Same thing, I could speak from the res life side. Like I, in the freshman male dorm this year, the amount of connections that I've seen being made, even in a situation where you think like people can't meet each other face to face, so how are they gonna like make friends? And yet still, it still happens because we as a school just care so much, and we love being PC students. And I really do think that that just shows how much the school is really special.
That was a good question, Margaret. I like that one. Talking about the community is always fun for us. Cool. Anyone else have any other questions that they really want to know?
I just have a question, like, what do you guys usually do on a weekend?
Sure, yeah.
So obviously there's a lot that goes on campus. So Serb and I are both part of a club called the Board of Programmers, which is the primary programming club on campus. So we do events from the big spring concert every year to like small little events. Like we helped out with like tie-dye masks last weekend. Just like little fun things like that. But I think off campus, we have so much in the city of Providence. It is amazing. Like the amount of food that I eat on a weekend is probably disgusting.
The food slaps. Federal Hill, oh my goodness.
The city it's the best foodie city. It really is. This morning, my roommates and I, we got up and went to Need Donuts, brought them to Prospect Park that overlooks the city, and stuffed our face with donuts. It's not a great thing, but I love to go find new coffee shops every weekend. There's fun little things like I went to see Aladdin, the touring Broadway company last year. Like really fun things that like I feel like you don't get at a lot of other schools. There's so much to do off campus. It's a ton of fun.
And what's awesome is that like the school always like provides like transportation to stuff like that. And there's also the RIPTA, which is kind of like the Rhode Island like metro. There's a bus stop that stops right in front of campus. And with our PCIDs, we have free admission to go right there. So we can like go to like Federal Hill or like Providence Place Mall. And then also if you wanted to like get a little bit further, I'm from Massachusetts. So the commuter rail, you can take the bus right to the station. You can take the commuter rail up to Boston if you really want to get a really big city feel. But yeah, the city of Providence is pretty slept on. There's a lot of things to do. I know like before COVID, like there's water fire. Me and my roommates love doing that. And with BOP, we have a lot of events, like the smaller ones. Like I remember like on Tuesday timeout usually has like something like McPhail's, and we have like Harry Potter trivia, or I think wasn't there like a Swiftie trivia, Madison?
Oh,
like
we had Taylor Swift
yeah.
trivia, I think Saturday.
Yeah.
But even bigger things, like we'll go to like the Red Sox game, and like you can get super cheap tickets, like fun stuff.
So like there's always something.
Careful, Maeve's from New York, so I don't know what are rooting.
But yeah, definitely you will find something to do. And even if you just want to like chill like in your room, like there's always like something to do, like in Slavin, or like something will be happening on like the outside. So there's always something to do on the weekends.
Great. Well, thank you very much, both for Madison and Sariba. That was great to hear from current PC students. I promised that we weren't going to have you on for that long because I know that everyone is fairly Zoom fatigued at this point, whether you're going to school on Zoom or you're talking with family on Zoom. Everyone's on Zoom way too much these days. But I appreciate you coming out today and learning a little bit more about Providence College. I'm going to follow up with everyone in an email to give everyone all the contact info from the people that you met with today, so that if you ever have any questions about either student life or some of the more academic questions for the professors, you can very easily get in touch with them. And it'll obviously have my contact info in there too. So if you have any admission related questions and you want to know more about the admission process and how that works, feel free to let me know as well. But thank you very much. Thanks again to Madison and Sariba for giving some of their time today. And thank you for learning a little bit more about Providence College. So I'm going to end the Zoom, but it's good to see everyone. Nice to meet you. And I wish you the best with the rest of this semester or a year. Stay safe, stay healthy, and go Friars.
Best of luck to all of you. Definitely email us if you have any questions. We are open book.
we are in our rooms, so give us something to do.
Bye.
Take care.